Hello YouTube, X458 here, and welcome back. So I want to continue with my stock refinishing project, and we've already covered step one, which was fitting the stocks to the revolver. Step two is going to be stripping the old finish or removing the old finish. Well, I'll usually remove the old finish in one of two ways, either with chemical means or with abrasive means. If I choose to go the chemical means, I'll either use 100% acetone. This is not very expensive. You can get it from most any hardware store. That's real simple. Second one is I'll use a chemical stripper, which works in about 30 minutes. But there's a lot more cleanup involved with it, but it's still a very effective stripping means. And third, I'll use an abrasive means, and I want to talk a little bit about that one shortly. But for stripping with acetone, it's real simple. Probably the easiest method to use, but acetone is a strong sort of an aromatic chemical. It's extremely flammable. It is a hazardous chemical. You don't want to use this around an open flame or out in your garage with the car running or your gas water heater, anything like that. And you definitely don't want to use it near your furniture, because I promise you, you're going to be very mad when it gets on the furniture and ruin the finish. But all you need to do with acetone is put it in a jar with a nice seal on it, and just drop your stocks in it and go back in a couple of hours and the finish will be removed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to illustrate that this stripping process with the acetone on this tube with these extractor cutout stocks. Just drop them in. If they'll fit, put the top on it and go back in a couple of hours, and the finish will be removed. Now, stripping method number two is you can use this, it's a chemical stripping compound. I would place these on an aluminum pan or some other type that is resistant to this chemical stripping agent. And I would spray this agent on the stocks and just set them aside for about 30 minutes. And at that point, you're ready to remove that agent. And I know the can says is to remove with a scraper, but I find that it works better if you did it with some really hot water and a dish detergent and a toothbrush. And just put it in there and scrub, and it comes off, and it does extremely good job. It strips it all the way down to the bare wood. Now, it will leave a little chemical residue, so you may have to repeat that cleaning process once or twice. And once done, just set them aside and put them in a nice warm, dry spot. Let them dry for about 24 hours, and then you're ready to proceed to the refinishing process. Now, this stuff is extremely strong. You definitely will need some chemical resistant gloves. These blue nitrile gloves it'll just eat right through them. And latex gloves, you're going to really need some nice chemical resistant gloves to use this, but it is a good stripping method. But really the method I want to talk about today is removing the old finish with abrasive means. I know there's a lot of video on YouTube and a lot of information floating around stating that you should use sandpaper. And I'm not opposed to sandpaper for removing a finish, but I will caution against using sandpaper, because if you're not careful, you can actually change the shape of the wood that you're removing the finish from. Sandpaper is really designed to remove material that is much softer than the grit in the paper. So if you're sanding wood, if you're removing finish from wood, that wood is much softer than than the grit material in the paper. So if you're not careful, you'll actually remove wood in that finish removal process. And on a grip that is as small as these, you can easily round over edges and actually change the shape of that grip unintentionally, just in the removal process. Now, what I prefer to use is Scotch-Brite. Scotch-Brite is merely just a hard, coarse nylon or plastic, and it's not as hard as the wood, so it's not going to remove any of the wood during this process. All it's going to remove is the finish, because it's coarser than the finish, and it'll take off the polyurethane or the urethane or the lacquer or whatever it is that are on these grips, and you won't distort anything on the wood. Now, you have to be especially careful using sandpaper on these checkered areas, because you can actually flatten the top of these this checkering out, and you lose a lot of the gripability of the stock. So I always prefer to use Scotch-Brite. Now, again, you can find this at any of your local hardware stores. It's going to be at your Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, automotive stores. This is industrial, commercial grade Scotch-Brite. It's very inexpensive, but yet it's very effective. So I want to show you what my method is for removing the finish with Scotch-Brite. The first thing I like to do is, even though I'm going to be using Scotch-Brite and not sandpaper, I like to take some painter's tape and cover the checkered areas on the stocks. I'm not concerned about damaging them, but I always say it's better to err on the side of caution rather than wishing you had. You don't want to create work. You want to create something that you're going to be happy with. And just taking a couple of extra seconds of applying some painter's tape to the checkered areas kind of reassures that you won't damage that checkering when you're removing that old finish. You just put it on, press it real good, and I always take a knife and just go around the edge, and then just tear out the excess, and that keeps you from damaging your checkered areas when you're removing the old finish using abrasive means. Doesn't take a lot of effort. It just takes just a minute or so, and you said you'll protect your work. And just trace it out with your knife and remove it. Doesn't have to be precise or exact. Just want to cover it. Okay. Get all this out of the way. So now it's just to show you how fast this removes the finish and doesn't hurt the wood. I'm gonna start right here on the edge, and again, this is Scotch-Brite. Very, very effective. It takes the finish right off. Far more effective than sandpaper. Does not hurt the wood at all. Doesn't even hurt the medallions, because the medallions is far harder than the Scotch-Brite. so you don't have to be concerned about, you know, damaging any of the plating on the medallions. Takes off the last remaining bit of the finish off the bottoms. I mean, and this is done in just a matter of minutes. With just using good old Scotch-Brite. Now, another thing this does is exposes a lot of areas that may not be perfectly smooth from the factory, and you may want to go back later and hit them with some 320 or 500 grit sandpaper and smooth them out. But it does a fantastic job of just removing the finish without distorting the wood. Now, I prefer using Scotch-Brite as even using acetone, but I was just wanting to illustrate that you can use acetone and how effective it is, and with so little effort. It's just kind of like set it and forget it. Just drop it in the jar, fill it up with acetone, go back in an hour, and the finish is all gone. It's all removed and suspended in acetone. And you can pour that acetone back into your original container if you like, and reuse it as many times as you see fit. Okay. That finish is completely removed. That took all of about 3 minutes. Now, with sandpaper, it would have taken much longer. I'd have used much more sandpaper, and I've had to be way more cautious than I am with this Scotch-Brite. But that finish has been completely removed. And it is ready to apply a new finish. Okay? I'm going to repeat the same thing on this one. And the next time you see me, we'll be ready to start applying the new finish. That's all I have for now. Big Swole 58, signing out.